Hi everybody, Marahib, how are you? Good. This is a little high for me, but I can't see you. Well, I'm really honored to be here with all of you. This is an amazing event. When we restarted the Palestine Action Network last year, it was meant to actually bring together and become a container for all the amazing organizations in the Bay Area and all the awesome individuals who have been committed to the liberation of Palestine, so that we can come together on a regular basis, respond to what's happening on the ground in Palestine, as well as to respond to what's happening right here in the Bay Area around Zionist repression. And of course, as we were coming up into Nakba 70, the 70th year of Nakba, of the catastrophe of the occupation of Palestine, we knew we had to do something really special. We had to do something special for our community, for our allies, for people in Palestine and around the world, so people understood what the Bay Area stands for. And today, what you see is exactly an illustration of that. So give everybody yourselves a round of applause for this great effort. So I speak to you as a Palestinian living in diaspora, as somebody born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. My father is from Beit Tiksa, which is near Jerusalem. My father's village, you can only enter from a certain checkpoint, and you have to have a permit in order to live in the village. My grandmother and my mother come from Aqir, which is near Ramle, which is a village that no longer exists and the name has been changed. In fact, when I was there 2 years ago, I worked really hard to find Aqir, and I asked taxi drivers and people, do you know where Aqir is? And most people had never heard of it. And I found one special taxi driver from Ramle who told me, I can take you to the village. And unfortunately, because of how difficult it is to navigate and move in Palestine thanks to the Israeli occupation, I wasn't able to see that village. But I was fortunate enough to grow up with family and parents who passed on our oral history, who taught me where I'm from, who taught me where they're from, taught me my full name, taught me what it means, and allowed me to carry these stories on forward today with you. So I want to talk to you, before we get into the local organizing, as someone born and raised in the Bay Area, I want to talk to you about my grandmother, Maryam, who I grew up with. My grandmother, Maryam, was born in Aqir and lived there until the people were forcibly displaced from the village in 1948. My grandmother grew up with me, would tell me stories about Aqir, what she remembered as a child, the orange groves, the ways in which they utilized the land, the neighbors, how she actually had Jewish neighbors who she lived next to. And then she told me the stories of 1948 when she was forcibly displaced from her village, when they were afraid of the massacres they had heard about in Deir Yassin and otherwise. And she was in Riha, so she lived on the Mediterranean, and that's where she learned how to swim. So unlike all of my family members, my grandmother knew how to swim. And she swam every day in the Mediterranean for as long as she could before they were moved to a refugee camp in Jordan, where my family now lives. My father was from Beit Tiksa, and as a Palestinian, he left in 1967 living in Jordan. He came to the United States in the early 70s and only got to return to Palestine after 37 years with a US passport. So the privilege of the US passport allowed him to go back to his village. And I went with him to Beit Tiksa to see our village, to spend time there together. And I remember him walking through old Jerusalem after 37 years. I remember him knowing all the streets, all the roads of Palestine. We drove through Palestine as if he was just there yesterday. And I remember him walking through old Jerusalem and bumping into an old friend he went to elementary school with. Someone he hadn't seen in 37 years, and they recognized each other, and they gave each other hugs, and they cried. And in that moment, I knew Palestine will be free. We will win. Palestinians, 70 years into this occupation, let's remember we continue to resist. Here in the Bay Area, we continue to resist, and we recognize the partnerships between the United States and Israel. We recognize that we're not just fighting Israeli apartheid and occupation in Palestine. We're fighting against US imperialism, global capitalism. We're fighting for social and economic justice for everybody, for all oppressed people. We're fighting for the indigenous rights of people of this land, like Karina told us at the very beginning of this program. That is what we're fighting for, and all the work we've done in the Bay Area is such a testament to that. I want to first acknowledge this space. I was told by my comrades of the history of this space. And before I do that, I want to thank Impact Hub for giving us this space for free to do this event right here in San Francisco. It's rare that we get spaces like this where we can actually hold events and celebrate and actually not pay thousands of dollars right here in the mission, right, given gentrification and displacement. But I also want to let people know, I was reminded by my comrades that the Palestine Solidarity Committee, how many of you guys remember that committee? The Palestine Solidarity Committee's office was in this building. So there's a history of Palestinian resistance in this physical space. We've been here for decades, and we continue to celebrate our culture, to resist occupation, and to build connections with other movements. I want to also recognize that I'm seeing people I haven't seen in years. And it's a really, really beautiful and awesome opportunity to bring together folks at a time that is a reminder of our occupation, our colonization and displacement, but also a reminder of our community and how connected we are and how committed we are to one another. And we will come together in some of the hardest times and some of the best times to be able to continue to live and thrive in our dignity. So now let's talk about how we've been doing that, how we've been fighting occupation locally, how we've been making connections to what's happening in Palestine, to what's happening right here in the Bay Area. How many of you guys have heard of Stop Urban Shield Coalition? So as we take moments of silence to honor the people in Gaza who are at the border fighting for their right to return to their original homeland, as we honor all the martyrs who we've lost today and every day, as we honor all the political prisoners, we also honor them by local organizing and resisting the visibility and the impact of Zionism right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we did so as the Stop Urban Shield Coalition to really organize against militarization, against police violence, and also against the fact that Israel comes and trains local police and emergency responders to further criminalize other Black and brown communities. And the Bay Area said no to that. For 6 years, the Bay Area said no to that. We put pressure on decision makers, and we won. And as of 2019, Urban Shield will no longer exist. And Linda mentioned Block the Boat. And I think it's actually really, really important that we remember Block the Boat for multiple reasons. We are talking about Gaza today as we are talking about Nakba 70. And in 2014, when thousands of people were massacred in Gaza, in 2014, when people were resisting across all of occupied Palestine to support the Palestinian people, and as Israel raided them with bombs. In 2014, when we didn't know what to do with ourselves, to stand in solidarity with our people and our families. In 2014, we organized one of the best campaigns against Zionism in the history of the United States, and we won. In 2014, we worked with every movement of social justice right here in the Bay Area. We organized with ILW, the Longshoremen. We made sure that we had the solidarity of the workers, and many of you in this room were with us at 4 a.m. and at 4 p.m. when we'd go to the halls and talk to the workers and let them know why we needed them to not unload the Israeli Zim ship, why the Zim ship should not be allowed in the Bay Area. We did that for multiple days, for multiple months. And the workers refused to unload that ship. They refused to do it for 4 consecutive days. They refused to do it the following month, the month after that, until October 2014. And since 2014, the largest Israeli shipping line carrying international cargo from Israel to the United States has not returned to the port of Oakland. That is a huge victory, and we don't win victories and win these campaigns in isolation. They build upon each other. They build upon each other, our connections and our movements, and we'd like to think the victories for Palestine are a victory for all oppressed people, for all of us as we try to chip away at U.S. imperialism, and knowing the partnership with Israel makes it that much more capable of doing what it does, and the atrocities from Yemen to Iraq to Syria to here. We are in solidarity with all oppressed people, and that is what the Palestine movement is about. So I want to remind you all that today is not the beginning of the activities and the end of the activities. We commemorate a Nakba today. We wanted to have a community event, but we have protests coming up too. We will not allow Israel to continue to operate in San Francisco without being held accountable for its atrocities. We want to make it as difficult as possible for Zionism to continue. We do in fact want to kick Zionism out of the Bay Area. And on Tuesday, we'll be at the Israeli consulate at 4 p.m. to honor the day of the Nakba, the days that people in Palestine will be rising up and resisting the move of the embassy, but as also people in Palestine will be rising up in support of their own right to return and live in dignity in their original homelands. So we really urge you to show up on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, when the former Prime Minister of Israel, the war criminal, Ehud Barak, will be right here in San Francisco. So please join us as we protest and make sure that we make it as difficult as possible for a war criminal to speak in the streets of San Francisco. Will you join us on those 2 days? So in order to join us, you have to do some work. And there's a lot of stations after this program, after we have some awesome performances left, including a solidarity performance and Depke. Afterwards, we're going to ask you and call you to join the different stations, to prepare artwork, to actually document your oral histories, and to go to a social media station and take pictures so the whole world knows what San Francisco did today, and the whole world knows where San Francisco stands. Now, before I end, I want us to watch a video because I think it's important to see ourselves in the history of the liberation movement for Palestine and to remind ourselves of what's possible and what we can actually accomplish. So again, this is the boat video. For all of you who were there, take this in, remember what's possible, remember what we're committed to, and remember that we will win. Thank you.
Are shifting all over the world. People are no longer standing silent to the genocide and the massacre of the Palestinian people. This weekend, for 3 consecutive days, we made history by showing the world that we will no longer, as Bay Area residents, we will no longer stay complicit with business as usual with the State of Israel. We were able to block one of the most prominent companies from the State of Israel, the Zim shipping line, from docking and unloading its goods at the Port of Oakland. Thousands of people showed up en masse on Saturday, and again, over 400 people showed up to form a community picket, and workers decided to stand on the side of justice by not crossing the picket line, not just on Sunday, but on Monday.
An injury to one is an injury to all. Tear down the Israeli apartheid wall.
This was in response to a call out from the Federation of Trade Unions in Palestine, calling on workers around the world to stop handling Israeli goods. Just as the boycott movement was spurred on by the International Longshore Workers Union in 1984, that inevitably led to the toppling of the regime in South Africa, this is a historic moment, and we hope for this action to be a catalyst for many ports to follow. One of the most inspiring things was to see the youth, right? The young people from the Arab and Palestinian community, the elders, right, who are coming out and walking here in the heat because of their discipline to this cause. It's really inspiring to see the groundswell of support to really isolate the State of Israel. And as more countries around the world cut off their diplomatic ties with Israel, it is no longer going to be popular for the U.S. to support it unequivocally. We can no longer just talk about the occupation. We can no longer just talk about 2 states, right? That we want one state, democratically, one person, one vote, where Jews, Muslims, Christians, seculars can live together equally in a real democracy. That's what Palestinian civil society is calling from us. They're all looking to us. We are not just an inspiration for people here in Oakland, we're an inspiration to the people of Palestine. And it's really emotional for me as a Palestinian American. I feel like I was an activist for life, right? Growing up, feeling like, when is the moment gonna come? And in my lifetime at least, I know that there have been cycles, right? Where the tides have shifted. I feel like I'm living in that moment.
Wake up, wake up, wake up.
We deserve to live on our lands, right? A land that is so integral to our history and the continuity of our people, right? So that our children can know that they're Palestinian, that they can know that Palestinians do exist, that we're not an ancient people, that we're a resilient people. And so that's the message that's coming out of civil society all over Palestine. Sending a message to both Israel, to our local elected officials, to the Obama administration, and to the international community that we will no longer be complicit with business as usual from the State of Israel.